Okay, so we published our component, this what is running locally, to GitHub. And if I now open the GitHub page, I can see that it looks the same. It acts the same. I mean, it's a little bit smaller as a GitHub page, but I mean, we can see our component live on GitHub. The only problem is it looks very sad because it's so empty and alone. So usually these kind of inputs are used in forms. So I was thinking that we can update our demo to not just show the input, but instead create like a little form. So how do we do this? Let's create a variable called page, which will be element. So document create element and just a regular div as always. And then we will say page inner HTML and we'll define what comes in. So we'll start with a title, so h1. And then underneath we can make also a subtitle. So like this, and this is going to be h2. Oh, here it's also h1. And here comes the title. So let's make a variable title. And this title can be demo or my demo form. And then we insert the title in our HTML as a variable. So we're using $ open curly brace, close curly brace, and in between the title variable. And we'll do the same for subtitle. So let's just copy the structure, subtitle, oops, subtitle. And this is going to be saying, please fill out the form. And we add it to the HTML. So this is now the page. And instead of just input X, we will append basically the whole page. So let's see how it looks. Okay, we have a title and we have a subtitle. What is missing is, of course, our input. If we want to add an input field, input is already a DOM element. And here we're creating an HTML. So if you want to add variables to HTML, you have to wrap them in $ open curly brace. But if the element itself is a DOM, then we have to do a little trick. So we have to create a special tag. So these are the tags, h1, div, h2. But here we have to create some custom tag. So let's call it an X, but we can call it whatever. And yeah, and then after creating this HTML, we have to say page query selector X. This means go to the page element, query everything inside, and find a tag that is called an X. We could also say page query selector H1 or page query selector H2. Or if we would write this here, we could even say document query selector, because page was already appended to document. So now document knows everything that is inside and we can query the whole document. But before we append the page to document, we cannot query yet. So we are querying the page element. We can query any element that has sub elements. So we say page query selector X, and when you find it, replace with our input integer. So we can just rename this X with input 1 and copy. and we will replace this with our input one. So the inner HTML for page will be this. This will be just like an empty tag, but then immediately we will search for this tag and replace it with the DOM element that is stored here after we call input integer. So this should now add the input field to our page. So because this is a form, let's say that it has also like a title for each of these input fields. So this one will be like H3 subtitle, and it will say type or enter your age. And then we can make another one that's after that that says enter your year of birth, for example. And then we create another tag. This one will be called, for example, Y. And then we also afterwards query selector for Y. We call page.querySelector, and we search for element Y, and then we replace it with input 2. Let's create an input 2. Here, input 2. It's literally reusing our component. We required input integer here, and we have access to our module, our component. And once we call it with this, like a function call, we call this component, it returns a DOM element, and we can call it as many times we want. It will literally always do the same thing. So we can make like a complex form with like 10 fields while basically reusing this one input component. So let's see. Yes, so we can type some numbers here, and we can also type some numbers here. The thing now is that for our age, we don't have a problem. Our limit, we set the limit to 150. But if I want to type a year of birth, it doesn't go because our maximum for the input is set to 150. So the next time I will show you how we can adjust the module, the component, so that when we call it, we can pass in a certain parameter, some options. And in these options, we can tell what do we want minimum and maximum to be, and some other things if we want to. So this is what's going to happen next time. But so far we have this. So we can also again run npm run build and git add and git commit -m update demo. And then we can just push, and changes should be visible on our GitHub page. Not immediately, we'll have to wait for a bit. Will we manage before the video stops? Yes, it worked. Okay.